Hello and welcome to Crafting with Madam K. Today, since it's Sunday, we have mimosas with Madam K. So what we're working on today is one of these cool little no-sew purses. So this purse is going to be studded and glued together and use one of these patterns of weaving the leather around to hold it together. So there's no need to sew this purse at all. We're going to cut the pattern out of the leather in 3 simple pieces, one piece being the entire purse itself, one piece being the strip that holds it together, and one piece being the front cover to create the design. Now I'm not going to make this exact design because I already have one like this, but it's going to be very similar. I'm actually going to do a Spider-Man design, so it's still going to be black and red, but it's going to have a Spider-Man logo cut out on the front. So we're also going to use the Cricut. So this makes it super easy. We're going to upload the pattern to the Cricut design space, run the leather through the Cricut, and boom, we'll be done with this purse in less than an hour. So let's have fun. First thing is the measurements. The purse itself is going to be about 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches when it's all said and done. My normal design is about 5 by 7, but I actually made a mistake on cutting this leather, so I shrunk it down a little bit so I could reuse the piece. So I have some it's about 2 ounce leather. I would say it's about 2 millimeters thin, and it's the designer side leather, so it already is stamped, or it's already textured, dyed all the way through. You can see on the line, so it's dyed completely through, so I don't have to do anything with this leather. I just bought it completely finished, so all I'm going to do is put it together. Now, to use the Cricut, they normally recommend that you use the strong grip mat. However, I'm going to use a standard grip mat, and I'm going to show you how this will work just as well. A lot of times when you use the mats, as you can see how dirty it is, when you put the leather on the mat, the backing of the leather comes off and creates those fuzzies that are really hard to clean. Sometimes you have to actually throw the mat out. Although check out one of my other videos that I just uploaded on how to restore your Cricut mat and clean all those fuzzies off. But to completely prevent those fuzzies altogether, we're going to use contact paper. So just cut out your entire piece of leather, which, to give it some wiggle room, cut out about 10 inches by 17 inches at a very minimum 9.75 by 16.5. That way it gives it about 1/4 inch on each side for the Cricut to cut. Attach the contact paper to the back nice and firmly, and then we're going to attach it to the Cricut mat. So line it up carefully. Go ahead and stick it down, and here's the trick. Some people will use tape on the edges to hold it in place, or again the strong grip mat. I take a rolling pin, and I find that by using the contact paper it gets a stronger grip to the mat, and by using the rolling pin it really flattens it out and gets it completely stuck to the mat, and there's no room for it to wiggle around. I have not had any issue with the leather moving around on my mat while it's cutting after using this technique. So this is a really great technique here. Now it's going to be done in 2 cuts. The first one is the entire purse itself, and the second one is just going to be that front piece that we're going to cut the Spider-Man symbol out of. So this piece only needs to be about, it's going to finish at 6.5 by 4.5. So just to be safe, on the safe side, cut at 5 by 7, just to give it some room to cut around. Okay, so, oops. Okay, get that unlocked. We're going to go ahead and load the first mat into the Cricut. Oh, so see, it didn't load, so always make sure it loads in right. We'll hit that again. There we go. So we got that loaded into the Cricut. Now let's come over to the computer and I'll show you what I have here on Design Space. So if I go back to my canvas view, you can see that I have, I'll make it a little bit smaller, I have the entire purse design. All of these little squares are going to be cut out by the Cricut, which is going to easily allow us to feed the strap through there. And then I have the top piece where we're going to cut out the spider design. So let's go ahead and make this. In it's going to do 2 cuts. And I know it's going to do 2 cuts because my first design is in black, my second one is gray, and that tells the Cricut that I'm going to change materials between, so it doesn't try to arrange them on one screen. Go ahead and continue. So I'm connected by wire through the machine. Now I'm going to, even though I said that this is probably 2 to 3 ounce garment leather, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 6 to 7 ounce tooling leather. That makes the machine think that it needs to push a little bit harder, and it'll make sure that it cuts all the way through. Now it's recommending the knife blade, which you can only use if you have it connected to the computer. You can't use it through the phone app. But I'm actually going to go with the deep point blade. I've just found that the deep point blade gives a much smoother, better cut, and I can also change the pressure on the deep point blade to give it more pressure to really cut through the leather. I've used the knife blade before and found that it doesn't cut all the way through, and I find myself using an X-Acto blade to finish off the cuts. So now that I'm all ready to go and my leather's already loaded, I'm going to come back to my Cricut, and I can see this is flashing ready to go, and we'll just go ahead and hit go. Now I always make sure to watch it when it gets started, just to make sure it doesn't accidentally start cutting off the mat. If it does and I made a mistake, then I'm going to have to hit pause and readjust, which is what happened the first time when I realized that you can actually see the lines here. It started to cut off the mat. I measured wrong. So I'm reusing this on just a smaller design. Now it's going to actually cut the entire design out, and it's going to go over. Okay, that was very close. I thought it was cutting off the line. This is why you don't want to make it too close to the exact measurements, because you want to give it a little bit of room to cut. That's probably the closest you want to get. But it's going to actually go over the same cut about 3 times because I selected the thicker leather. So it thinks the leather's thicker, and it's going to cut those about 3 times on every cut, which is going to make sure it cuts all the way through. Okay, so it's all done. It took just about 10 minutes to complete the cuts. So we'll go ahead and unload it. And again, it took so long because it went over multiple times. But now watch, you can see how easy it is to just pull the excess off. And we'll pull this off. Even these little pieces pop right out. And those are the real pains. Like, you could do easily by hand cut out the main style of the purse, the main shape. But these little things, that would be such a pain to cut by hand. Not saying you couldn't do it by any means, but those are going to take forever to cut. And it pops right out. And then we'll just peel the back off, and this piece will be done. So I'm going to go ahead and just get these off my mat here and load up the second cut. So let's go ahead and get my 5x7 piece on the mat. No, it's almost 5x7. Get that rolled out. Just go ahead and feed it right through again. Come over to my computer, make sure that this next one's selected, which it is. I'm going to use the exact same measurement or same settings and hit go. And this one should only take a few minutes, I'm sure. Okay, so this has cut completely out. That only took maybe about 4 minutes, not long at all. It always cuts the inside out first, which is nice. It makes sure that it cuts the details out first, so it's more stable. Now, because these are smaller, tinier cuts, just be careful peeling off the mat. Leather is durable, but it will still rip if you force it too much. So it looks like we might just have to clean this up a little bit here. Most of it cut out, but some of it's still there. Okay, we have that all cleaned up nicely. It's a little hard to see, but once we put it on the against the background or red background, we're going to see that it's looks really nice, and it's going to look really sharp once it's completely glued down and studded in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to use EcoFlow Leathercraft glue. So I like this instead of something like the E5000 or contact cement, because contact cement might be a little easier to work with, but it smells really bad, it's hard to use inside, it takes forever to dry. This actually is going to bind pretty quickly. So after maybe, it doesn't say how long to leave it to fully set up, but I would say you can hold it in place to fully attach, and then maybe about an hour under some pressure, and it should be a really strong seal. It's really thin. It applies kind of like Elmer's glue, so be careful about when you push pressure on it. It is going to squeeze some glue out into the visible area, so I have some paper towels here ready to clean that up, because it does not really dry clear. But once everything's said and done, we can always take some tweezers and an X-Acto knife and clean up any bits of glue that we see sitting out. So we're going to put a nice coating of glue on this, on the back of this. And I'm going to put it on here, line it up nicely, clean up any glue that kind of spills out with pressure, and I'm going to actually put it underneath my granite slab that I use for tooling to give it a lot of pressure and really hold it in place for maybe about 20 minutes, and then it should be completely solid and ready to go. So go ahead and use some paper towels here. Let me just zoom in so you can see a little more of what's going on. Okay. And you can use a brush or a sponge to apply this. I'm just going to use my fingers. Like I said, it's like Elmer's glue. It's water-based. So I'm just going to use my fingers to move it around and smooth it out. I'm going to get the larger parts first, and then really get into those detail pieces. Really focus on making sure that you have plenty of glue on the points on your edges and on the points of the spider to make sure that nothing, little tiny pieces catch on something and pull off. Now it does start to set up a little quickly, not too rapidly, but you want to move a little bit fast so that way it doesn't start to set up before we actually bind the two pieces together. Okay, I think that's a good solid cover. I'm sure when I flip it over I'm going to find some pieces that need to be cleaned up. Oh yeah, definitely glue all over this place. Okay, let's get that lined up. Try to line it up perfectly when you drop it down, because once you slide it, you're going to maybe get glue in your visible areas, which you don't want. Yep, so first of all, I have the leather part clean on top. Two reasons. One, that's the main part of the image. I don't want that ruined by glue. Two, when I set something on top of it to put weight and pressure down, I don't want to accidentally glue it to the thing. I'm actually just using the side of my X-Acto blade to drag that around and clean that up too. That actually seems to be working pretty well, especially after once it starts to sit up a little bit. Okay, cool. So we got that all cleaned up here. So I'm going to go ahead and just set something really heavy on top of it for a while. I'm going to set my granite slab right on top of it and let that really get some pressure on there and really get that hold in nice and permanent. So I'll finish the rest of my mimosa. I suggest you finish the rest of yours, and I'll see you in about 20 minutes for the next step. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes, so I went ahead and moved the granite slab off of this, and I would say that just as a general product review for the Leathercraft glue, this worked really well. Everywhere that I wiped the glue off with a wet rag, it's completely clean. I can't see it. Using the X-Acto knife to get the glue out from the inside before I put the slab on worked perfectly. It has a really nice, solid glue, which I was actually really concerned about with all these little pieces, but they are very firmly held in place. So I am confident that that's going to work out really well. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and just get all of this contact paper off the back. which you could have done this before you glued it or after. It doesn't really matter which way you do that. And then I had already cut out the strip that I'm going to use to feed through these slots to hold the purse together. So again, since it needs to wrap around the entire bottom and both sides as one piece, leaving a little bit of a loop, so I can either put a D-ring, or I actually like this design instead. It's a lot easier just putting a grommet in there, so you can hook your hook right to it for your strap. I think that worked out really well too. So I might go with that one for this purse. But either way, so the key is just to make sure that you cut a long enough strip to feed all the way around the purse and have about 1 inch to 2 inches left over, depending on which style you're going to go with. Okay, so I finally got that done. It was a mess. They came off in tiny strips, but it only really took a few minutes. It was just a pain. But they all came off and they didn't destroy the leather. It did make it a little bit fuzzier than to begin with, but honestly I don't think that that's a problem, because this type of leather, the back starts off so flat that adding the fuzziness to it kind of gives it a nice leather feel. So I like it. So what I'm going to do next, and you don't have to do this, but I think that this step makes it a little more secure, is I'm going to glue the edges together to line up the holes. And I'm not going to use the glue. I'm actually just going to use some of this permanent double-sided tape that you can get at Tandy Leather. It's permanent, but at the same time it will come apart. So I wouldn't use this as your only means to attach and bind two pieces of leather together, but as a temporary attachment until we feed the strap through it, this is going to help hold it. And then that way, when you're done, this is pretty secure. Without that, this would be just flopping around. So we want something that's going to hold that in place so it looks nice and clean. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut a strip of this. Now be careful that you know how this is going to fold up. So I want the front of my purse to have a nice rounded edge. I don't want this flap here to be on the front. So I'm going to make sure that the flap that's on the back side of the purse is the one that has the tape on it, so that when I'm gluing it together, they can kind of, flip around like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and just with one strip do the edges. You don't have to do the inside pieces of, I guess, what kind of looks like a ladder. You don't have to do those. You can just do the two sides, and that'll be plenty to hold this in place. Okay, so now that I have the tape on one side, I'm just going to go ahead and fold it up, carefully line it up so the cutouts all match up. Now if you had like a book or something to wrap this around, it might be a little easier, but I'm just going to do this freehand. Just sort of start at one part, line it up from the top, and work my way down. Easiest to use, instead of lining up the sides, line up that first hole. So see how that lines up, and then just carefully work your way down, trying to line up all the pieces. As long as you don't put too much pressure on it, it won't firmly secure. Once you have it lined up exactly where you want it, put some pressure on it so it does lock in place. It's a little hard when you get down to the bottom of the purse, but as long as you go one hole at a time, it'll all line up. Okay, just like that. So that's the front of the purse, so I'll go ahead and repeat that on the other side. Okay, so we got that all glued in place, and I put a lot of pressure down on the sides to really make sure that it's nice and firmly held in there. The hardest part is getting these corners down at the bottom, but if you just work your hand in there and get them pushed down, they hold really well. So now I'm going to take the strip that I cut, which again is just under 1 inch wide, and I think I went with 17 inches long, about 17 inches long, and just start from one side and weave it in and out. So we're going to start from the outside, weaving in, with our pretty side out, of course. Now it's really important if you are making your own design for this that you have the right number of holes on each side, because you want to be able to have the corner wrap around like that and cover your seams. This first one I did not have enough holes, so when I got to this side it didn't do that. So it doesn't look as pretty as something like this that wraps around on both sides. So just make sure you have the right amount of holes to weave in and out and get the look that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and I'll be right back with you with the next step. Okay, so that was just long enough to leave about an inch, a little over an inch on both sides. So it's going to cut it really close if I wanted to fold it over and stud it in place to hold the D-rings. So I think I'll probably do something more like this design with the grommet hole. So now let's go ahead and look at putting the cool studs on the front of our purse. Okay, so at this point I'm putting the studs on. Now I could have done that before attaching the sides, and then I would have had a flatter surface, so maybe that's the better idea, but now that the sides are attached, I just have it hanging off the corner of my granite slab, and that's fine. I haven't put the studs on yet. I just sort of lined them up to where I want them to go, and then I'm just going to carefully put some pressure on them so I can see the marks. There's also pens out there, like a white gel pen would work well too. Once I put the pressure on, I could mark it so I could see where my spots are. But I'm really just sort of rubbing my thumb into them to leave a little bit of an indent, so when I go back over with my hole punch, I'm going to know where I need to punch the holes at. So I have one of these tools, which come in handy because it can give me multiple size punches. So I'm actually going to use the second from the smallest punch for these. And I'm also using double-sided rivets. That way when all is said and done, you have the caps on both sides and it looks a lot nicer. So we'll go ahead and just punch those holes out and get ready to set the studs. Okay, so now that we have all of our holes punched in there, we can go ahead and start setting our grommets. So the first, or not our grommets, our rivets. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of go all the way around, putting the double-sided cap rivets through the back. And these are going to be, these are the medium-sized rivets. So that way they have plenty of room to stick through the back, and they stick out maybe, I'd say maybe 1/8 of an inch. A little more than 1/16 of an inch. So that way it's going to give it plenty of room for the cap to really catch and smash on and be nice and secure. Another thing I'm going to do when I set these rivets is I'm actually not going to use any sort of rounded back piece. So when everything's all said and done, the rivets are actually going to be smashed flat. So you can use, sometimes there's different metal trays that you can smash the rivets into to keep their rounded look, so they stick out a little bit further, but I really like the flat look, and especially for a purse, because you don't want to have a purse on your shoulder and have it rub up against something and that rivet catches something and snags on it and either damages the purse or damages the thing it snags, most likely. So once we have all of those set through, we'll just turn it back around and set the caps. So I have one of these rivet setters, which is just a metal post with a little dome that's going to fit nicely right over the rivet. And then I choose to use a maul. Some people use a mallet. It's just a matter of preference. And I'm just going to hammer it right on my granite slab. Another thing that I do when I'm hammering the rivets is I hit low on the hammer, low here, so it's going to give more force. And I do 2 good solid smacks, but I don't hit it so hard that it could go and set in one hit. I want to tap it into place a little bit so it goes straight down. If you just smash it as hard as you can, you're more likely to have it mushroom too quickly or slide the rivets out of place, and then you end up having the rivets that aren't completely matched up and lined up with each other. So I just do a couple taps just to get them set in place. Okay, so as you can see, they're not completely set. They're still up above the leather and they're not flush like the other side. So I'm actually going to just flip it over and hammer from the other side now. That way I can get that flat design on the front too. At this point, it should only need one good solid smack. Okay, there we go. So now they're nice and flat. They're almost flush with the leather. They're not going to catch anything. So the front of our purse is done. Now you can always add a latch or a snap. If you were going to do that, I would say this bottom stud right here could be a button instead of a stud. That way it's in line with the studs, but it buttons and snaps. But for this purse, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll add some Velcro or something, but it holds shut just fine on its own because of the weight of the leather, so I'm probably just going to stick with that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get this ready to set some grommets on the edges, so that way we can attach our belt or our purse strap to it. So for the grommets, I'm going to use the largest setting on my punch. I'm going to go pretty close to the edge of the strap. So I cut these with a little bit of overhang, a little more than ½ inch. So I'm going to go pretty close to the edge and just eye it up and put it right in the center. Now I'm going to go ahead and just work the grommet through the front here. So it's in there nice and solid. And I like to use these little rings that most of the grommets come with to put on the back. It not only helps it stay in place, but it's going to look a lot nicer when it's finished. I'm just going to move over to the edge of my table space here. Now I have one of these. It's not the best grommet setter, but it's really tiny and it's going to go on the bottom side. So I'm actually going to use that as the part that I smash. Probably not the best term, smash, but I use that, and just I'm actually going to use my rivet tool to hold it in place. So it folded the grommet down. It's holding that ring in place. So I'll go ahead and do that on the other side. And then I'm also going to just knock 2 holes in the leather and stud it in place here. So I'll go ahead and do that and show you the finished product here in a second. Okay, so I have the grommets set and I cut the holes for the rivets. And I wanted to show you how I'm going to put these rivets on, because if you don't have a clamp type of setter and you're just using this type of setter, it's a little hard, because now that we're working with a purse like this, we need to somehow get that on a sturdy surface. So I just moved the corner to the edge of the table so I can try to slide this on and just stretch the leather a little bit to make sure that you're over top of the table and not the overhang. And then that way you can get enough of a grip. This is where you really have to be careful though, because the leather definitely wants to move around because you're sort of forcing it onto the surface. So be careful that you're holding it in place. Okay, and we are done. So we have this final purse. We have these little grommets here that you can use if you have your own purse strap. You can just clip that right onto the grommets, or you can clip a wristlet strap or something on there. I just got these plain natural strips from Tandy Leather. You can cut your own strip. You can use the same fabric. Get creative with that. So this is our awesome Spider-Man purse. I think in the end, because of the video recording and not having made so many of them, it took a couple hours, but I bet you could get this done in 2 hours. And after you make a couple of them, you could probably get them done in under an hour, especially using the Cricut and the patterns and everything. So thanks for tuning in with Mimosas with Madam K. Be sure to check out my next video and subscribe to my channel. And I think with this one, I'm going to go ahead and share the Cricut Design Space template with anyone who has Cricut Design Space, or even if you don't have a Cricut, you can actually sign up for Cricut Design Space to be able to access this template. So go ahead and read the instructions in the description below, and I'll show you how you can get access to this design for free. Thanks again. May not be the right way, but it's the Madam K way.